Good morning, everyone, or maybe good afternoon. Today we have an amazing training for all of you. It's all about CBD and really what makes our CBD different. We talked a lot about CBD and the science of CBD a week and a half ago, but today we're diving into the CBD difference, the farming difference, and what truly makes our CBD and our hemp different than all the others on the market. Most hemp farmers will genetically engineer their plants to really maximize the CBD levels. And so they'll only use female plants and to really get more of that CBD. But we do things so much differently here. Our hemp starts with organic, non-GMO, non-feminized seeds, and it grows naturally into full spectrum hemp with over 150 plus biological compounds. So we're bringing on a very special guest today. We're bringing on Brett Packer. He is our executive director of our Young Living Farms, and he is so close to all of our farms, and he knows the ins and outs of how we plant our seeds, the difference that our farming makes, and he is going to talk into detail about our farming methods and our farming processes. And honestly, I love when Brett talks and when Brett speaks about this because he knows so much. Just hearing him talk about our farms and our CBD is so eye-opening about how truly amazing and how much different our hemp plants are than others on the market. So I'm excited to bring on Brett and talk more about these details and more about the Young Living and Seed to Seal difference of our farming methods and especially our hemp and the difference that our hemp makes. So Brett, I am going to bring it on over to you and have you talk more about these amazing new products.
Hey, thank you, Haley, and thanks everyone for joining. Um, we've been working on this project since 2021, honestly, maybe before, and creating unique genetics on our farms for hemp. Um, you know, Haley, sorry, this might be a little choppy, but Haley's gonna share a slide deck for me, and we'll start going through some of this in detail. So if you just bear with me. So yeah, first slide, the world's most misunderstood plant. Um, that's what I consider hemp because of people's perception, um, people confusing it with, something like cannabis or marijuana. And we'll go through that and make some of the distinctions between hemp and cannabis and things like that. So again, world's most misunderstood plant. So I love this slide, with Gary, and this is how we approach everything. And it's all about discovery. You have to take the risk you have to take to get the information if you want. If you're not living on the edge, you're wasting space. And this is how Gary was able to pilot so many unique, herbs and trees that no one was distilling or putting into essential oils or products. So, I worked with Gary for 17 years, starting when he was first developing the finca in Ecuador, and worked on the other farms. And so I got to live that mentality Gary had, that approach he took towards everything he did. And one thing about seed to sill is it's a mentality or a process of continued improvement. So no job's ever done. And it's just a great way to approach, life in general, but it's really effective when you're working with whole plant approach to health and wellness. We'll go next slide, please. So here's another one I love too, and this comes from Dr. Ollie's book about CBD or cannabinoids working in harmony or being enhanced for bioavailability with essential oils. And so, he says, seed to still certification is extremely important for essential oils. And the same quality assurance process is also of the utmost importance for CBD or let's say cannabinoids in general. And so, with guides like that, with wisdom like Gary and Dr. Ollie that worked really closely together. That's what we've done. We've looked at hemp, and it's absolutely a unique crop, and we'll get more into that. It has a lot of unique attributes to it, and we've taken that and actually just cultivated it and extracted it into the seed to sill model we learned from Gary, and followed Dr. Ollie's advice exactly. So, and this is what I love about it. I mean, I don't know how many of you have visited the farms or seen videos of the farms, it's a level of transparency that you'll get from no other product. I mean, you can come on site, you can meet the people behind all the processes and see their passion and their dedication. And you know, learn anything and everything about the farms, open any door, ask any question. And so in that, if you haven't visited the farms, maybe you've seen the presentations that Nicholas Landell does about the French lavender. Or, Mary actually even wrote a book about Gary's work with Nicholas's father on French lavender. And so maybe you're like, oh, okay, I've heard that, or I've been to the farms. I know about seed to sill. But what if you haven't? So the French population lavender is an example we're trying to use for how we're doing the hemp. And so, one thing about Gary and his approach, it's seed to sill, right? And I mean, plants are sentient beings that every single year they interact with their environment, they interact with us, and then they express themselves through genetics, and that happens through seed. And so even with lavender, almost all of the industry, they found one plant they really, really liked. And instead of letting it go to seed, they would just take cuttings off it. We call these clones. And then instead of, this plant being able to express itself and be in nature's cycle, all the genetics were the same because it was just cut from the same mother plant and they just kept cutting and cutting and cutting. And so it didn't change with the years. It had very limited chemistry. So when a plant creates seeds, it creates a bunch of different sets of genetics. So it could survive, let's say a drought year, or maybe a really wet year, but it puts a range of genetics out and they continue to adapt with every year. And in that adaptation, you get a very wider and broader chemistry profile. And so, if you're not familiar with this part of like everything we do in seed to still with our agricultural practices, distillation or extraction, I could boil it down to basically say we're trying to have the chemistry profile. So these could be different terpenes or flavonoids or all these different molecules within the plant. That plant has all those different compounds working together in harmony for tons of different reasons, right? And so we want to borrow that gift from nature and have the chemistry profile and even the molecules be just like they would in the plant, to truly be like how they work in nature. So part of that is having a really broad chemistry profile. And then part of that is not denaturing the molecules. I mean, you can denature molecules in a lot of different ways, but basically you've changed their molecular structure and they won't have the same bioavailability for our bodies, right? So again, all of our hemp's grown from seed, just like the lavender. We have one of my favorite things I used to do with Gary. We call them mother plants, and rather than harvesting like the lavender, where you cut the flowers off where the seeds would develop, you pick ones that there's characteristics of it that are really great for us. And I mean, those could be physical characteristics, just things like we'd all recognize, like size and, of course, aroma. But then with our ability to do, the lab testing, we have labs on each one of our farms. We find chemistry that we find really interesting and really attractive for different reasons. And we save the seeds for this. Now, this is a natural relationship we have with plants, and Gary would always say in seed to sill, there is no separation. And so we're not separate from these plants. In fact, we have profound relationships with them. So it's, I consider us part of this natural cycle, especially when we're treating the plants, with respect to let them be in harmony with nature and let them fulfill nature's cycle. And so, you know, the yearly seed collection, every year the plants acclimate. And if they've been brought to a new environment, there's a different profile of the soil, there's a different elevation, there's a different UV index with the amount of sunlight they're receiving. There's atmospheric, inputs into it. And so it's really fascinating about hemp is like I believe and it's widely believed that it actually acclimates quicker than any other plant and starts taking on the characteristics and expressing itself with all those inputs I'm talking about in the environment. You know, and I truly consider us one of those inputs and feel like, you know, the plants have an awareness that they're working with us. And so, you know, that's one thing I think is really special about coming to the farms, you know, having that relationship with these beautiful, you know, sentient beings. Um, and we're going to start developing harvest events for the hemp too. I think we're going to get that cleared through legal, so you could be part of the planning, part of the harvesting. We'd even have you be part of the seed selection. And I did that at up at Tabiona the best I could within the current legal guidelines, and had Jacob's event, the man camp, the men, whatever you want to call it, this men's retreat, and let them be involved in the seed selection. And so that'll be more and more that we'll all be part of this. You know, and then another thing about it, and we can't go too far in depth on this, but you know, all of our farms that's grown on, our hemp's grown on, are certified organic now. They've always been organic in practice, but you know, Gary didn't like regulatory agencies or bureaucracy. And so now you can see it posted, they're all certified organic, but even beyond organic, because organic can actually have terrible practices, believe it or not. They're all done in regenerative agricultural practices. And so, to put that in the simplest terms, basically, we're mimicking the fertility cycle that happened in a forest or a jungle in our fields for our crops. And so, you know, what that does is it turns the soils back into a living system. And I mean, we use a lot of beneficial cover crops that secrete a carbon sugar into the soil, and it makes the microbiome in the soil just grow incredibly. And it's really similar to the GI tract in our, you know, I'm sorry, the microbiome in our GI tract. And so when you have this amount of, you know, a healthy tablespoon of topsoil should have 7 billion different microbes in it. And there's a lot of, when they get healthy and balanced, there's a lot of biodiversity in that. And I mean, that can be, you know, really beneficial bacterias, aerobic, anaerobic, or, you know, one of the other dominant um, parts of the microbiome are, of course, funguses. But, you know, each one of these break down a different micronutrient or mineral and provide the plant exactly what it needs. So there's a level of communication happening there too, where the plants are able to secrete the right carbon sugar to feed the right bacteria or fungus to get the right mineral or trace element. I mean, it's communication at a level that's just like, you know, it's something we'll study our entire lives and still not understand it. But ultimately, you know, for me in Young Living, the master chemists aren't in our labs, they're in our fields, right? And if we let these plants, you know, work in harmony with nature cycles, they do this amazing work. And then instead of just having basic fertilizers, the ones we know, like, you know, nitrogen or phosphates or potassium, you know, it's called NPK. You know, it's really limited nutrition the plants are bringing. But then if you look at what they can do with the microbiome, breaking down nutrients for it, it expands to a level that's just astounding. And I truly believe that makes the chemistry in our hemp and all of our crops very unique, right? Um, the extraction methods, now we are steam distilling the hemp and collecting essential oil, which you don't see in hemp products. And you know, hemp has so much to offer that, you know, it has the cannabinoids, there's flavonoids, you know, there's terpenes we know as essential oils, and then there's a seed oil. So we've combined all of these to truly have a whole plant approach. And then the extraction too, though, the cannabinoids, you can capture very little with steam. Most of it's not water soluble. And so we have a really unique extraction method that leaves it full and whole and doesn't denature the molecules. I guess another part we're doing too is including the chlorophyll. And it's really unique. Hemp has 3 different chlorophylls that most plants won't have all 3. But the chlorophyll is incredible in the beauty boost for well, I'll let you look into the benefit of it. But and then we have a small amount of partnership involved, and they've been audited more thoroughly than any other partner for some of the hemp we're doing. And so they're truly seed distill partners we're very proud of. If we go next slide, please. So again, this is the map of our current hemp um, production. There we go. So it's at Highland Flats, it's at the Nebo Farm, and it's up at Tabiona. And it's really unique. So we're combining all these different essential oils and cannabinoids, everything we're getting from these plants. And so they have different chemistry profiles, and that's helping our overall chemistry profile of these plants even become more whole spectrum, full spectrum. You hear CBD, but CBD is actually just it's the one everyone knows, and search engines find it, etc. But it's only one of 140 different cannabinoids or even more. And so we're calling it, CBD plus plus plus, or you hear about the entourage effect. This is entourage effect like times a million. And I mean, there's truly not another product on market like this, not even close. Again, I don't know if I've ever been this excited about a product launch. So again, you can see the Skyrider Tabiona variety that's grown by the Red Rocks, the Highland Flats variety, and you can see a male plant too. And we'll get more into hemp being a dioecious plant. If we go next slide, please. So this is Mount Nebo. I mean, hopefully a lot of you have been there and you know the beautiful mountain behind the farm where we get the water for our irrigation and everything. So, I mean, I'm not too tall. I might be 5'9" if I stood up straight. So, I mean, the hemp has really thrived in Nebo, and that's another phenotype or chemovar or strain or whatever you want to call it. But, it's a unique set of genetics that is continually to adapt every year and become more unique. And so that's another thing that makes our hemp absolutely unique is the genetics are unique to each one of our farms. And I mean the hemp in general, most processors or co-packers or brands, they buy hemp on the open market and they just run it through enough processes. And there's a lot of processes in hemp production or CBD production that we would never allow in CBD. I mean, it denatures the molecule. There's chemicals used. There's temperatures used, sometimes getting up to like 430 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, we're developing the genetics. We're letting the plants be the master chemist, and then our extraction has the most minimal input possible. If we go next slide, please. So I've spoken to a lot of these, but if we go through it again, just really quickly in a summary, again, these are all unique genetics from our farms that give us unique chemistry profile. Um, it's, this word feminized might seem kind of strange with a gender assignment to it, but, hemp is both male and female. It's a dioecious plant. And so when generally, they want the female plant and they want it to not be pollinated. When it doesn't get pollinated by the male plant, one of its core functions, of course, in biology is to reproduce. And then it actually its ovaries, on its flower, just create more and more and more cannabinoids. And this is out of balance with nature, and it's how you create marijuana and things like that. And so really, I mean, there's a lot of research that suggests only 2% of the market is not genetically modified. When you see that word feminization, I mean, you can just replace it with, genetically altered, genetically modified, GMO'd. It's the same. Again, organic certifications on our farms, the steam extraction, the ability to add essential oils. We're looking at the hydrosols in it too, which is really interesting. And we're actually identifying water soluble cannabinoids that would actually be in it. Pretty interesting. And then we're looking into the fiber too. And the hope is eventually we'll be able to turn the fiber post distillation into packaging material. So, I mean, we're even going fuller and fuller and fuller with what we're doing with it. And then the branding we want based on our farms and the experience you have with the hemp on each farm and the character of each farm. And then, this offers an opportunity of perfect transparency of source. When you have questions about, the hemp, where does it grow? What are your practices? I mean, please come visit the farm and this year we'll try to put out a lot of content, educational content, information about the hemp. And it'll be starting really soon in all of our greenhouses with the seeds we selected from last fall. And then again, we have just one main partner we're working with, brilliant person that has 10 years of research. I can't go too into it yet, but I mean, that we'll be sharing more about that. And there's someone that just mirrors our practices exactly, or maybe in some ways beyond. It's just incredible. Next slide, please. So again, if you're not familiar with hemp, CBD, cannabis, I mean, here we go again. If you look on a search engine or just in general, CBD is what's going to come up. I mean, that's one cannabinoid again out of 140. But you could consider it like CBD plus plus plus, or entourage plus plus plus. But again, the amount of full spectrum we're also using hemp essential oil from both males and females. And the males almost never exist, but they have a distinctly unique chemistry profile, especially in the essential oil. We're including the hemp seed oil that has just a litany of amazing benefits. I mean, that's not quite my job. I'm not going to go into that too deep. And then, the synergy of Young Living Farms growing these unique genetic profiles and combining them together, and then being able to add the packaging from the hemp fiber is something that hopefully will get done in the not too distant future. Next slide, please. And, for me, being in Young Living for 17 years as an employee, but using the products my whole life, I look at this as our next revolutionary, iconic product line. And, really, we just took hemp and we backed it into the standards that Gary started across the world, right? And so by doing that, it's created what I feel like is a truly unique product line compared to anything on the market, and it will stand shoulders to shoulders with all the iconic product lines we all know and love. Next slide, please. Again, I mean, some of the definitions, if this is something new that you're approaching, this all became legal in the 2018 Farm Bill federally. It's defined, it's cannabis sativa. And then even under cannabis sativa, there's some subspecies like cannabis ruderalis or cannabis indica. But I mean, the formal definition is cannabis sativa, and all the seeds, the derivatives, extracts, et cetera, et cetera. But the key distinction is it's all under 0.3% THC to be considered hemp. But again, it actually is the same species. So you could actually, create seed between hemp and cannabis, but you're required to keep it under 0.3. Now, again, when the female doesn't get pollinated, it wants to get pollinated. It wants to have the pollen stick to it, so it creates more of this resinous cannabinoid. But where we don't genetically modify, we leave the males in the field, it all gets pollinated. Our THC percent is way below the 0.3. In fact, it's half of it. And even in our products, it's 0.1. So we're way, way, way below the legal threshold. But the THC is actually incredibly important for the entourage effect and the bioavailability in the endocannabinoid system. So I mean, it's not really my place to speak to, but I mean, there was a decision to leave the THC, but there's also a lot of work being done to have zero THC products in the future. So again, for those of you that are gardeners, generally you don't see plants being both male and female, right? You don't go into your garden and say, oh, well, there's the female tomato plant and then there's the male, and but hemp is dioecious. I mean, there's different fruit trees that are dioecious, right? For them to pollinate, you have to have a male and female, so maybe that would be familiar to you. But both plants, the male has the female reproductive organs, and then the male has the male reproductive organs. But without both of them, you cannot create seed. So if we go next slide. So this might be familiar to you. This is the one you see, in pop culture or whatever, or depicted as cannabis. But this is the female hemp flower. And so really what you have is a seed pod or an ovary with these little hairs that stick out to actually collect the pollen that the male's dust, and this pollen can go miles and miles actually. So if we go next slide. So this, we won't get too far in depth, but you know, I encourage everyone to learn about the chemistry. I'm sorry, the anatomy of these. And so it really demystifies it if you're approaching it for the first time. Again, this is a female and what's called a flower, or a bud, or a cola, or what are the other names it gets called. This will show the different, you know, parts of the anatomy. And again, I mean, the main thing you have is an ovary or a seed pod or a calyx. And this is where the seed will form. And then sticking out of it's what's called a stigma and a pistil. And that's what collects the pollen from the male and then transfers it down to the ovary and starts creating a seed. Again, with the feminization, they use a chemical process where it's actually it's a pesticide they use, and it stresses the plant, it inhibits its hormones, and actually turns it into a hermaphrodite, and they breed it with itself. And when they do that, it gets rid of all the male genetics, the male chromosomes. And so, you know, if as far as it being a GMO, genes are housed in chromosomes, right? And they use a chemical that stresses the plant and then eliminates all of the male chromosomes. So, I mean, if that's not a genetic modification, I don't know what is. I mean, it's not quite like adding scorpion venom to lettuce or something like that, but it definitely, you know, not natural, definitely genetic alteration modification. We go next slide. So this is the male hemp plant. And really, he's pretty simple. He grows pretty tall. And he has a bunch of little white flowers that just open and spread the pollen to that female flower we were looking at on the last slide. Go next slide. Again, here's a little more in depth on the anatomy of him, right? Another unique aspect of hemp, though, is it's what's called photosensitive or light sensitive. And so it goes into a vegetative state first. And then once the hours of, you know, light and day get a little darker, it actually starts showing whether it's a male or female. And a lot of times this is done artificially with lights turned off on a timer in indoor grows. And, you know, and the amount of chemical inputs put on hemp in general, besides the feminization process, I mean, there's studies coming out of California. If you look what's being sold, it's pretty disturbing. I mean, the amount of pesticide, herbicide, fungicide used in it that then comes through in their extract, and then all the chemicals used in their extraction process. And you know, look into it if you want to. I don't want to speak to it too much, but I mean, it's pretty disturbing, and it's you know, it's showing up in products people are using. And so it's, you know, I'm really proud of what we've done in Young Living Farms because it's in harmony with nature. It's organic. The extraction does not have all these chemical inputs. It's just actually really beautiful. So we'll go next slide. So this is again that what we're developing in Tabiona. And if you take a quick look at this, you know, this is gas chromatography for the essential oil we extracted from it. And one thing that really jumps out at me is the beta caryophyllene level. And again, if you look at Dr. Ollie's book about cannabinoids being enhanced with the entourage effect for bioavailability with essential oils or terpenes, I mean, the beta caryophyllene jumps off the charts on this one, right? And the beta caryophyllene is the terpene that there's the most research into, showing it interacting directly with the endocannabinoid system. And so again, you know, if we'll have a slide for it, but actually next slide. There we go. If you're studying the endocannabinoid system yet, or if you're just learning about it, I mean, please do, because this is what this is all about. You know, they're calling the endocannabinoid system the last undiscovered system in the body. And again, if for any reason, you know, cannabinoids are uncomfortable for you or taboo, something very important to know is our bodies actually produce cannabinoids. You know, it's called the endocannabinoid, though. It's made in the body. And when we use plant cannabinoids to help enhance our cannabinoid system, because we have a lot of depletion in our systems, it's called phytocannabinoids or plant cannabinoids. And so the whole goal, every decision on this product was to have as much bioavailability with the endocannabinoid system as possible. And so having it, not denatured the molecules through all our processes, having an organic, um, having the full range of cannabinoids instead of just CBD greatly helped the entourage effect with the endocannabinoid system. And then the essential oils, like I was just talking about, the beta caryophyllene, and look at Ollie's book too. He breaks down tons of different essential oils, and then by terpene, how they would help enhance the entourage effect in the endocannabinoid system. So, that's our last slide. Thanks to everyone for joining. We're going to put out a lot more content and information too on this all year, but the best place to learn about it's truly the farm. And so we want to get you all involved with hemp events, or even if you just do a visit, make sure you get out to our hemp fields and ask questions about it. But anyhow, I hope everyone enjoys the product, and we're just incredibly proud of it. So
Thank you so much, Brett. I feel like I've heard you talk through this a few times, and every time I'm still writing notes like crazy because this information you shared is so valuable, and especially for all of us that have been with, Young Living for so long, we know that Young Living truly cares about the farming and how we grow the plants. That's what sets our oils apart, and that's what sets our CBD and our hemp apart too. One thing that I like that you said was that the soil that we grow our hemp in it's similar to microbiome, where like the healthier that microbiome is, the healthier that soil is, the higher quality plant you're going to get, the more compounds you're going to get, the more differentiating factors are going to get inside of those plants. And as you can see from Brett, he's very passionate about this. And so that passion trickles down into all of our farms because he's really the head of all of these farms. And so he's ensuring that these practices are being done and that Young Living is following these and that we are getting high quality plants. And I love that because it really helps solidify and validate. Not that we need any more of that, but that you are getting the best quality products because we get like Brett, he's he's the executive director of all of our Young Living farms. And so we get him to come on here and talk about farming, and he wants to talk with all of you and all of our brand partners to help share the message of how powerful our plants and our oils and our products truly are. So thank you so much for hopping on, Brett. If you have
of
any
course,
questions, please put them in the comments. Tag your team members, tag anyone who wants to know, because this is a super valuable and really just an awesome training on the farming difference and the seed to sale difference that our hemp has in our CBD products. So thank you so much, Brett. And
anytime.
we hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. See you guys.